Welcome, welcome. We have 60 people here on Zoom, and we have, let me see if I can show everybody. We have a little historic party here.
Everybody say hey. We have a minion. Well, we have 11. There's 11. It's still brand new. We're making the transition to live people. It's great.
So we're going to mute everybody right now. Thank you so much for being here with me. As I celebrate this milestone of 25 years since my graduation from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College and from my smicha from Reb Zalman, I wanted to pause in sacred space with you, my beloved friends, to reflect on the journey and give thanks for what has emerged through the Mishkan that we have built together, the sanctuary that we have built together. This body of work that I draw on every day and then build upon has emerged in the space between us. The work emerges out of my love for you and out of our commitment to the one alone so luminous in her mother's heart. We gather to pause in gratefulness and acknowledge a miracle that is flowing. I already feel well appreciated. I am in the process of healing old places in me that have felt misunderstood and marginalized. With your encouragement, I can step beyond some of my, not all, but some of my neurotic patterns of worry, hustle, and scheming that come from survival brain and step into a celebration of the miracle of flow with grace, relaxed confidence, and heart supported. So I want to turn this ritual over to Phyllis.
Hi, I'm here. And it is so lovely to see so many beloveds and so many who will become beloveds when we meet in another time and another place. Shefa has asked me to hold this ritual within the space of her design. So don't ask me about anything because the true architect is hers. Because of the many weeks and years, she saw me do a similar ritual at the end of a week at Eilat Chaim over the many summers, where we asked 10 people, knowing that there might have been 100 people there that particular week, 10 people, a minyan, to speak about their experience, knowing full well that some of the things people said were going to be resonating in everyone or almost everyone, but that nothing that was unique to you was probably going to be spoken. Shefa has chosen 10 of us from the years of knowing her in all aspects of the work that she's done. That must have been the hardest part of this entire ritual. Only 10 out of the 60 or 100 or 200 who have been working with her and love her. And I am going to suggest to you that if we don't use the chat now, we don't distract ourselves from the chat, but really be present with one another. At the very end, I'm going to suggest how every single voice can be heard so that each person in his or her uniqueness can speak directly to Shefa about the effects of her work on them and in the world as they see it. I've simply taken the list of the 10, I'm one of the 10, and put them in an order of who I thought came into connection with Shefa and her work over in order of time. But since I am a person who lives in the present moment, time and dates are not exactly my forte. So it is clear I probably made a lot of mistakes. But I do think probably that I may have been the first. So I'm going to begin this with my own speaking to Shefa about the effects of her work. And I want to start actually from a story, very brief one, that is the introduction to my Arthur's book, Seasons of Our Joy. He tells this Hasidic tale. A Chassid was on the road to study with his Rabbi. Someone stops him and says, Chassid, you going to study Torah with your Rebbe? The Chassid says, no, I'm going to study tying my shoelaces. So I want to speak to you, Shefa, about the ways that you've taught me, even though I wear sandals with Velcro, how you have taught me tying my shoelaces. You and I first met in 1985 at the very first Aleph Kala, in which you performed a play about Martin Buber that you had written, I think, in a class in college or graduate school. And that was the beginning, but it was only the beginning. The real meeting, or the deeper meaning was when you came to rabbinical school here in Philadelphia. And in the year that you went to Israel, at that same year, 2 of our children were also in Israel for the year. And for reasons of their own kind, it was a very cold week or 2 in Jerusalem that year. And you offered us one of the 3 bedrooms in your apartment that you were sharing with a classmate. It was a very small apartment, very small bedrooms, but we lived very comfortably together, the group of us in that apartment. And it was there that I saw that you had a practice every Shabbat of inviting people to come into your bedroom from all over the city of Yerushalayim in order to make Shabbat services. And my learning started right there. And that's what I really want to talk about. Well, actually, let me go a step further and give it a little more context, and then I'll talk about what it was specifically that I've learned. When you came back from Israel and you came back here to Philadelphia, by that time you asked, because we had had such a very good couple of weeks living together, if you could live with Arthur and me, and you proceeded to live with Arthur and me for the rest of the years of rabbinical school and afterwards. So I had a lot of chances to watch you work. The first thing was when you were here in Philly, you taught classes each week on what you called leadership training. And I don't know that I ever said this to you, but I would laugh behind your back and say that it wasn't leadership training, it was followership training. You taught us how to be good supporters of you. And it's only as I've been thinking about it very recently that I realized that that was the key of good leadership. So first of all, what I saw you do is that you set a structure. And the structure was very daring. It was unlike any Jewish service that in any synagogue I'd ever seen. You asked people to come on time, and you required even that they come early. There's no synagogue in the world that has ever told people to come on time and gotten away with it. And in Israel, in fact, it was necessary because the doors downstairs were locked and you didn't want to be interrupted once the service started. So you had people ring as long as it was before you began. But you continued that practice when you came back to Philadelphia, and it created turmoil in the Philadelphia Panay community until people learned it was worth it. You also taught us not to chat with others when we walked in, but to come in and have the experience. And that's why I'm suggesting that we not use the chat tonight, that there'll be another way of communicating, but not with the chat. You asked us to enter the experience fully and to stay till the end. There was none of that synagogue behavior where people sat in the back and chatted. None of that synagogue behavior where people came and went any old time. There was no development of a service. You treated yourself seriously. You gave out of your own vulnerability and your own soul because you took it seriously. And you taught me that I could do that too. So that's the first thing. Because you were knowledgeable in the deep structure, what Reb Zalman used to call the matbea hatfilah, you created services, especially for Shabbat, that were based on it, but didn't include the myriad pages and words on the Siddur. Who can possibly enjoy and experience a service when they're drowning in words? Instead, you took the essence of things you thought were important and reduced it to an essential phrase. And from there, the chant. And we did those chants till we got to a point beyond our thinking mind. And that was a part of the exquisiteness of your work, that you enabled us to be there as full people, as people with bodies that could move, as people with hearts that hunger for connection to other people, as people who sometimes need to cry, sometimes need to be ecstatic, sometimes need to feel what's going on in ourselves, and often need to understand and to think about things we'd never understood before, even those of us who thought we'd had a good Jewish education, and those who'd never had any Jewish education. All of us were welcome to meet you in that place. You taught something about melody and harmony that has been an essential teaching for me. How important it is in life, not just in chant, to hold your own voice and to do it not so tight that you can't hear all the other voices around you. Would that you could teach that to all people in this country and around the world, to hold our own being and also be able to listen to others and see the beauty that's there in both parts. I think one of the days that was a triumph for me in New York City was when I had to hold the melody for your harmony, and I didn't think I could do it. And I did it because I had to. You showed the healing properties of chant, of silence, of intimate connection, of safe vulnerability. You showed that Jewish services could be places to make real connections. You did that through spirit buddy bundles. You gave you did it in a way that invited us to feel, to cry. I don't think I'd ever been to one of your services in which I didn't cry. And I wouldn't think I was successful if somebody didn't cry at one of my services. You made us learn and think, and most of all, you gave us the experience of God, however we define that, of love, of ecstasy, of pain, the fullness of being human. So you have taught me a lot more than Torah. You have taught me how to tie my shoelaces. And I thank you. Dibarti. So I'm going to take a breath and hope that I'm right about the timing in which we came into your life and you into ours, and call on you, Sylvia.
Well, I think that Shefa and I met each other and became dear friends immediately in the summer of 1993 at Bar Chaim, where we were both teaching that summer. And we were suite mates, and we hadn't met at all before. And I think we immediately fell in love with each other and immediately felt a commonality between the two of us, even though I think on the outside, Shefa and I were seen as or self-identified as the ecstatic and the contemplative, but we both understood that the ecstatic and the contemplative overlapped or underlapped each other, and that we both share the same understanding for closeness with the divine. And I am very grateful for our almost 30 years of friendship. When we, in the beginning, we taught a lot together, actually, but in all the years, the almost 30 years that we've known each other in this dear way, I really, when I reflected about what I wanted to say, I wanted to say, I really appreciate how I know that Shefa has made an enormous difference in the renewal of Judaism, and that the many people that Shefa has worked with have all been enormously uplifted with her. And I wanted to talk about one particular way in which I am uplifted by her and continue to be. The main thing that she has taught me, and the role that the way I have understood it is, among other things, we meet now and then. We talk a lot on the telephone, and we have talked regularly as elul buddies for almost 30 years. And even when we're not physically together, or talking on the phone, or talking about our tshuva objectives, Shefa lives in my mind as a person, the person who naturally in the place is all the time in the place of, since everything is happening, everything that happens with me, pleasant or unpleasant, is of God. It must be an offering to help me grow and learn. That's the lesson that I got. It seems to me with delight that Shefa moves through her life really thoroughly as the person who trusts that the life and the path are really representation. They are God, and she is prepared to move through it with confidence. It delights me to know that she lives her life moving confidently towards hers. I think about that point of view often, and I teach about it. I even teach a meditation that includes the words, "May I meet this moment as a friend." And I sometimes can do that, and maybe a lot of the time can do it, but not all the time can do it. And when I can, I realize that that ability to live confidently in the moment, because this is the moment that God has given me, is the most amazing kind of feeling to have. And I genuinely experience Shefa as the kind of person who does that. I think to myself, if there a way to represent it, the Shefa's gift of confidence, God is living through me and I am living in relationship to that, is a sense of, my sense is she teaches by osmosis, and that people can warm their hands in the glow of her confidence and her faith. The divine is unfolding in me and in you and in you and in you. So I think that everyone's been lucky to learn from her as a teacher. And as I have been lucky to have her as a friend and a confidant, and for all of these years. So Shefa, I really wish you and bless you. May you continue to live and to thrive and live your life as God presents it to you and represent that to many people always. Mazal tov.
So I can see I already got it wrong, because if you first met Shefa at Eilat Chaim had to have already existed. Jeff, you're next.
Okay, it's a delight to be here to honor Shefa. This is a tradition of 25 years out where rabbis get a Doctor of Divinity degree, which for the first time this year, people call it a DD degree, which is also didn't die. You get your didn't die after 25 years. And I'm really glad you didn't. And the important things, I'll say what I think are more important things, but one of the best things that ever happened was just a little, must have been after the first Kala, but somehow we found ourselves in Chicago at the same time on the road. And I was there with my mother, taking just on a vacation with my mother. My father had passed away. And we wound up staying in the same apartment somehow with Chef Sherry probably at the time. And Sherry came in and sang my mother a lullaby to put her to bed. So like that was like the sort of my warmest memory of and one of my oldest memories. And it was so meaningful. So when I got asked to share tonight, which I'm definitely honored to be included to share this way, then I had to start. Okay, well, what would I want to say? It took me about 10 seconds to figure out what I'd want to focus on for this particular gathering. I mean, I already told you the important thing about the lullaby, but and that is Shefa's work as a creative liturgist, a creative ritualist. That's an amazing skill and contribution because it helps us keep our tradition alive. I think it's way too easy to just fall back into old habits and old patterns and lose the life force. Sometimes what Bzaum used to call praying by heart instead of praying by rote. And Shefa, you've been able to really do that through the creative art, creative liturgy side. So, and then when I talk about that creativity, I mean, other people can write a melody here and there, right? And most of the time somebody will write a new melody for Modeh Ani or a new melody for Ashrei, both of which you've done. I'm not, and so have I, but you've done so much more than that, you know. But I'm going to let the chanting piece. I imagine other people will speak about it tonight. I want to talk about the actual role of how you use the chants. Shefa, you've been able to take the liturgy and essentially honor the depth of the tradition, but create it anew. Phyllis already referred to this, but when I come to a service that you're leading, it's always going to be deeply rooted in the tradition and completely new. And it's going to be completely new in the way that it will take me and others on a spiritual journey. And I think you're a master at that. I don't think there are not that many people who do it. Most of the liturgy we see is just sort of a creative way to say the same old words. But you've really put together new rituals and do it in a new way that honors the tradition and takes us on a journey with you. You're able to take us with you on a journey where something new can unfold. I remember at the last Ruach HaAretz, you created a red heifer ritual, which the red heifer ritual hasn't been done since the destruction of the Second Temple. So, except with you, I don't know, maybe some other people have tried, but it was a beautiful way to using your style, but to take us on that journey of what that might have been about, and what that could have been about in a way that could then help us heal from the energy of what that ritual was meant to help us heal from. So you're able to make a ritual new, based on the tradition, but new at the same time. So you can create a Kabbalah Shabbat service that mostly has totally different pieces of text, but they're not out of nowhere. They all fit exactly where Kabbalah Shabbat could be taking us. They're drawn off of other pieces of the tradition, so you have a real way of honoring the tradition and totally making it new at the same time by putting it together in a new way. Just in the same way that whoever wrote Kabbalah Shabbat the first time had to do. And that's a great skill you have, that you can do that. And it's not just a skill, it's a way of helping us understand the power of liturgy and take us on a journey with you. So in that first moment when I thought, okay, what do I want to say about Shefa, and I thought about this role as creative liturgist, creative ritualist, and in that first moment when I first thought about it, I think I was thinking that, that in that way you're I'm going to shift what I'm about to say, but in that way you are really Reb Zalman's heir in a way that I think not enough people are taking on that piece. There's a lot of, just again, sort of singing a new tune, but sort of going with the old stuff. So, but then I realized that I wanted to shift that. That was my first thought, that you were sort of fulfilling Zalman's legacy in that way, because that's what I think one of the things I'm trying to do is to fulfill Zalman's legacy in that way. And I was lucky enough to my first semester at RRC, I took a Davenology class with Reb Zalman where we met for 3 hours twice a week, every week, and session after session was new ritual, new liturgy, new ways to do it, totally new, that had never been done before. But then I was thinking that that was too small a way to say that you're one of the heirs of that tradition, because first of all, you weren't in that class. I don't know actually how much you learned from Reb Zalman, but you've created your own liturgy. You created your own legacy. That I think had Reb Zalman not been around, you still would be doing all of this, and that rather than thinking about you fulfilling something of Reb Zalman's legacy, you've created you've brought a whole, just as he did, you've brought a whole new thing and a whole new way of being Jewish that's really important. So that I think we're in your legacy, not that you're in somebody else's legacy. I think all of us are in your legacy, and I'm happy to be in it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Just in case anyone has not done this homework, if you look at Shefa's website, you'll see she has 224 chants on the website, plus 91 moda'anis separate from that. So that's 300 and whatever that number comes out to be, plus all the ones that aren't on the website, plus how many Birkot Hamazon. This is a legacy not to be believed. So with that, Rachmiel, I invite you next. And I don't remember what year you came into our world.
Well, I met Shefa in the fall of 1999.
Wait a minute. Why is it not doing it?
Are you hearing me? Yeah.
But you're not seeing you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing me.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, 1999 at the turn of the millennium, and at midnight, December 31st, 1999, it was on Shabbat, Friday night. We, after going to a drum circle, we set up candles in the shape of the Sfirot in Shefa's meditation room, and in her window looking out to the valley, we kissed at midnight and sent the kiss out to the entire world. That was our second date. So, wow. Let's see, let me do one thing here. Yeah. So, I am so glad that I fell in love with Shefa before I knew what she did. I moved in April 1st of 2000, and am I on the speaker? I'm seeing Sylvia on the speaker view. She's muted.
Let's go back to gallery.
And then go back to
Rachmiel, you won't see yourself.
in the speaker view.
Oh.
Oh, but I'm okay.
Oh.
Okay, thanks.
Let
Thanks,
me see you, Janice.
So I'll assume everything's going just fine. So I moved in April 1st of 2000. And I remember I went and saw a friend of ours and a friend of Shefa's in Taos. And at one point she said to me, "Do you know who she is? Do you know?" I said, "Well, that's my Shefa." Yeah. And so in August of 2000, I went to Lat Chaim. That was the Jewish Renewal Retreat Camp that Jeff and Joanna and Phyllis were running in the Catskills in New York. It was just an oasis, just this bright light of Jewish renewal. And so in August of 2000, I went for the first time. And then I found out what Shefa did and found out who she was. And oh my goodness, it was just ecstatic to have such icing on the cake. I mean, thank goodness I already had the foundation of I love her, because I would have fallen in love with her and wanted to marry her just if I'd never met her before and I saw her doing what she did. So that was really a good thing. And so then we got married September 2nd, 2001. And I even found my way back to Judaism. My mother's maiden name was Sylvia Sepulveda, or they Americanized it to Sepulvedo. And that's, and our ancestry, the Sepulveda ancestry comes from Spain. That was one of the names given to the new Christians, the new Catholics, after the conversos, after they converted. So I'm reclaiming my heritage, and I just took to Jewish, especially Jewish renewal, just like the proverbial duck to water. But what I want to say is that in the beginning, with the skills and talents that I had, it just made sense that I could assist and support Shefa. And I was a drummer, and I could chant. And so early on in the early 2000s, I got to do gigs with her after seeing what she did. I said, well, I want to do that with you. And when Shefa would start doing her chanting, 15, 20, 30 minutes before the service would start, or the workshop, or the morning class, she would get into the zone, and it was just amazing. Then it was like the goddess herself, Shekinah was coming through and being expressed in this angelic voice. And not only that, but with a real groundedness. Phyllis talked about people being on time, and the way Shefa was so strong and so protective about the space, about the class, about the people, about really making the space that could honor the work to come through. And I don't know if many people know this, but early on, even before me, Shefa tells a story that she was beginning a class or beginning something, and people were coming in late and schmoozing and talking, and the spirit of the work was going to leave. And they said, well, no, no. So it was going to go see if it could find someone else to channel through. And Shefa interceded on our behalf, thank God. And so the work stayed. And she even doubled her efforts to be impeccable about starting on time and creating sacred space to really honor the work. And wow, and it was such a potent force when I would be next to her drumming, and oh my goodness, it was like Shefa squared. She would just light up, and people that could see auras were just like, oh my goodness. And I could, warm my hands on sitting next to her. But it just felt so good to be that this is my beloved. This is woman I love. Thank goodness I fell in love before all this. Fell in love with her. And oh my goodness, it was just the best thing. So then the spirit of the work touched her and came to her and said, Shir HaShirim, it's time to bring back the Song of Songs to the people. This is the early 2000s, 2002 or so. She's upstairs, she's chanting the Song of Songs every single day for a couple of years. And then she started writing chants for it. And then we were chanting and drumming. And then we made a CD in 2004. But the Shir HaShirim, when the work came to her to say, let's blossom into this now, what happened is that in 2004, the way Shir HaShirim could really blossom in the world was to begin Kol Zimra chant leaders training. So in July of 2004, at Eilat Chaim, there was a circle of the very first Kol Zimra 1 chant leaders training, and to meet for 4 weeks over 2 years to really go deep with the work. This was like, okay, now we're taking it to the next level. And she followed the guidance and said, this is what we do. And so we did it. And then the Kol Zimra chant leaders training went through 1 through 9. And then it was kind of heartbreaking that we thought it was going to keep going forever, but it didn't. So it had to end. And it was with Shefa through that. But I had a sense the whole time that the spirit of this work, of the work, is so powerful that there's got to be something coming that's maybe even better. I don't know, but not better, because there's nothing like those 4 weeks of going deep, but something that the work needs to do differently. And it morphed into Soul Lift, doing the 1 week immersions. So I think so that the spirit of the work could reach more people that way, instead of a commitment for 4 weeks over 2 years. So Soul Lift was born, and was the week-long retreats, immersions into Soul Lift. And then and then the pandemic happened. And right, what did happen to Soul Lift? Oh yeah, the pandemic. We had to cancel our retreats. That's right, that's what happened. And because we were doing even retreats here in Jemez Springs, so that I could come. And at the beginning of all the retreats that in Santa Fe and in Jemez Springs that I did with Shefa, I realized it at one point, and I said, this is my favorite thing to do in the whole world, to do this holy work with my beloved, who I love so much. This is it. This is like, it doesn't get any better than this. This is my best week it's going to be. And then, so then that ended. And I think the spirit of the work nudged Shefa, and she said, we need to communicate with our alumni, with our students, once the pandemic and we're all in quarantine and don't know what's happening. So on a Thursday night in March of 2020, we started with doing a Zoom and with our alumni. And then because everybody's home together, with alumni and their partners and friends and spouses and family. And then it's like, well, let's open it up to everybody. So for the last 16 months, we've been doing weekly immersions for an hour and 15 minutes into spreading the spirit of the work to all over the world. There's people from Australia where it's the next morning, people, sweet woman Diana from Argentina. And so the work is still alive. We didn't know if it could happen through Zoom, but it sure did and sure is, and thank God for it. And now we're beginning to transition back into doing it live. But that's been, from my point of view, from sitting back and experiencing this journey, it's all of a piece, and it's all, well, this is for what we do now. Oh, right, one more thing. So then, like the bookend, so then last August, the spirit of the work came to her. I mean, I never know, when we go up, I do my meditation, my yoga practice and everything downstairs, and we meditate together now. And Shefa does her yoga practice and stuff and lifting weights upstairs. And then when we meet to do our meditation, she says, sure, love at the center. I mean, this is last August. She says, oh my God, I'm on fire with it. And she was on fire with it. And so it was this continuation of what had started in the early 2000s. It's like, okay, now we're going to take the spirit of the work of Shir Hashirim and put it back at the center of Judaism. The entire, if the whole Torah hadn't been given, Rabbi Akiva said, we could live our lives by the Song of Songs. And Shir Hashirim is the Holy of Holies. So Love at the Center was born and is going as, we're about 2/3 the way through the cycle and connecting it to the Torah portion, to the Parsha each week. And so we're doing that with immersion groups Monday and Tuesday night at Love at the Center. So that's been how the work has blossomed and evolved as I've seen it in my 20+ years with Shefa. Dibarti.
Shamati Rachmiel, and you have really reminded us, if anyone had any question about this, that you were the perfect partner for Shefa, because you really completely understood that spirit would have found another instrument if she had not held the field to make it happen. And that's really such a teaching for all of us, that when we are inspired, we have got to hold the field close so that people can enter into it, because we take it so seriously and so really. And that is such a deep teaching. To find a partner who gets it, you marry him. That's great.
That's right.
So again, in terms of time, I'm way off, and I don't mean about time tonight. And by the way, Shefa gave me some assurance that this is one of the only things that she's not going to hold absolutely tight to finish at the right hour. But I still want to warn the 65 of us who are together and 11 who are in Jemez Springs, that if every one of us speaks, we're going to be here till her 26th anniversary of graduation. And that's going to be a little bit hard. But I'm going to ask Elliot, I think you're next, but you might have come earlier in the history.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Phyllis. What a joy it is to be with everyone here, and Rachel and Shefa, to be with you. Zehayom Masavaya Nagila Benismechavo. This is the day that Yud He Vav He has made. On it, we will rejoice and be delighted. And so 25 years, that means that this year that we're entering right now is 26, or in Gematria, Yud He Vav He, the year of is, was, will, being, all at once. And so what a glorious way on this Juneteenth, on this Shabbat Chukat, on this solstice to experience some of that godlight and godlut at the same time. And I think, I don't know exactly when we met, because I have a hunch that we met in Philadelphia and kind of casually a few times. But when I really got to know you, it was at that blessed place of Eilat Chaim, and it was 25 years ago. And I was blessed enough to be able to teach her a week that you were teaching there. And I began learning with you. And I remember the night that Reb Zalman said was going to give you smicha in the morning, and he gave you a psalm to reflect on. And in the morning, we met. You were wakeful the entire time. Bati b'Megillat Sefer Katuv alai, and that smicha chant came out of you, and your Torah is written in my innards, in my viscera, in my kishkas, and you sang it forth. And Jeff was in the room too, along with Reb Zalman, and I was blown away, because I was in the presence of the real deal, of a kind of holiness that that I rarely had come into contact with, though I had read about and experienced in various kinds of ways. You, Shefa, connect. You opened your heart to me. You helped me open my own heart. You helped connect me in new, old ways to the ancestral sources. When you come up with new Torah, I hear psukim somehow. I hear ancestral teachings coming through you in new ways, though you know that you always ask, don't we have another story? Don't we have another story? That's a story you asked with Shir HaShirim. If Torah, as Rachmel said, could be, if the 10 Commandments of Torah had not been given at Sinai, we could have lived our lives according to Shir HaShirim. A lot of us have thought about that, but it took Shefa to jump in and say, okay, what would it mean to live this out? And not just live this out episodically, but week by week, and maybe over years as well. To put love at the center, learning to love and to be loved. From you, I learned new ways of staying awake, because I'm someone, it's easy for me to cover over some of my layers. And I find that in conversation with you, in chanting with you, and learning from your writings and your example, that the layers and the scales often fall off, and I can access other worlds which are really core to my way. I feel that you are someone who keeps the fire burning, so that those of us who sometimes are left with ashes that wind of inspiration can come across with your presence, and the word and we can catch fire again. From you, I learned a deeper way of harvesting. I maybe knew it in some way, but I learned it more deeply with you to see what arises at the end of a song. And once again, what came to mind was a teaching for me. It's like you enliven it, and that is Zev Wolf of Zhytomyr said, why does it say at the end of the Shochenad, Habocher b'shirei zimra, that God delights in songs or songs of chanting? And so he reread shirei as shayarei, as the leftover, the residue. What happens when we sing ourselves away? What's left is a residue of light and maybe of song, and we give that up. And another time, I'll just give one more example of, I remember doing a practice with Nishmat Kol Chai for you, and it seemed to go on for half an hour. I don't even know. And all of a sudden, by the end, what came to me, I was like swimming in the sea of the divine. And Ilu Finu Male Shira Kayam. If only our mouths were as full of song as the sea. But what came to me was Ilu Finu. If we truly emptied, then we paradoxically would be full. We would become song. We would become the sea. And so new things always open up. Can I tell you that your template for Torah study, right, of saying, what is the blessing? What is the challenge? What is the practice, has become a template for me. And if I can just say, learning again today, I mean, I must have read it before, but when you talk about the way Moses misheard the divine, and instead of speaking to the rock, struck the rock, right? You have tremendous compassion for Moses here. He failed in order that we might learn from his misstep. But you said to speak to the rock means to be in conversation with the natural world. Hitting it is an attempt to subjugate nature. And we talked about this in our minyan today. And one person said, yes, that's what we're doing in our world. We are constantly striking and hitting the rock. And I started to think of fracking and the way in which we extract oil from the rock, and what would it mean to be in conversation with the natural world? And so you're teaching seeds so many other people. You are Shefa Appleseed, right? And so there's so much that you see that you don't eat. You're not here to harvest, but I'm here to report that it's happening. And finally, I had 10, but I'm only going to do one more, is that if I ask, who does a Jewish bhakti practice? The answer is Shefa. And Shefa has taught us how to have this devotional practice, to be a lover of God, to learn how to give and receive. You are a balance between impeccable and structure and just flowing love. And you teach us how to enter, how to open the channels, how to flow, how to take risks, how to sometimes be immoderate in that, and that burning love, to risk all for love. But at the same time, and I learned this so powerfully, as surely Phyllis will remember, the Tu B'Av of 1997, right before I met Linda, my life partner, Linda Jo Doctor, is you also taught us how to bring it in. And so how it could be like contained, and we were like I feel like a Chinese lantern somehow, but not spilling all over the place. And I said, well, there really is one more, and that is a kind of what it means to be chaverim makshivim. You know that with me. That is to, and we talked about this. What does this phrase meant something to you? You asked me about it. I told you who the chaverim makshivim were in Tzfat, and how they got together in loving spiritual practice, and how they were they listened to each other and supported each other as deep loving friends. Your 10th commandment of of Shir Hashirim is thou shalt play with enthusiasm and curiosity while listening attentively for the voice of the Shekhinah. And I feel that is one of the great gifts. You are deep, you are serious, but you are also full of delight and fun. And so I say to you, if I can just riff on Psalms where it says, Lulei Torat Chashashua, if not for your Torah, which delights me, I would be lost in my suffering. But I would say, Toratech, your Torah, your teaching is Sha'ashua, is the greatest delight. And just saying that word, Sha'ashua, itself embodies that delight. The intimate engagement, surprise, wordplay, holy assonance. I bless you that your delight, your play, your love, your steadfastness, your willingness to risk all for love and your impeccability may continue to flow through us. Long may we play together. Amen.
So I simply want to underline one of the many pieces that you said, Elliot.
Oh.
Any of us who have had a teaching or leading experience in our lives understand that resistance for adults is a normal and natural experience. And Shefa, you have that magic capacity to take us as adults and to get through, not because you've battered us, but because you softened us up to that resistance so that we go back to our innocence and we can join you in that joy and that playfulness. There's not many people who know how to do that. Thank you for that. So Diane, I know that you've already told me that I've got you in the wrong year, but go ahead anyway.
Oh, thank you, Phyllis. Gosh, it's so great to be here with so many people I love who have transformed my life and are so woven and interconnected. And I'm really glad that at least 10 of us are speaking out loud, because as people are talking, all these moments, all these amazing moments are coming back. So I first encountered your work, dear Shefa, when in 1994, I found my way to Havarat Sivan, the small Jewish renewal community in the Twin Cities. And there in the little siddur that had been created by Jackie and Leon Olnick for the community, I read the words to the Shema song, and underneath it said, by Sky and Sherry Pellicro. And it would be a number of years before I found my way serendipitously to the legendary Aquarian Minyan in Berkeley, which was kind of a chrysalis for at least part of your life. And I came there as a spiritual leader, and eventually I learned the sweet melody to that song. But meanwhile, I actually met you in the flesh at the Aleph Kala in Fort Collins in Colorado in 1995. And there I really experienced what everyone has been speaking about, the full force of the work that you were in the process of growing in your afternoon chanting workshop. And there was a large circle of folks that sat on the floor, or we would move amongst one another and weaving the different strands of the chanting together. And as we did that, I was transported into what I would call a lyrically vibratory realm. I remember chanting Kosi Rivaya, and all the strands weaving together, synergizing to carry us into this unmediated God space. I think, if I recall in that workshop, that we played with the 8 functions of consciousness in a spiritual community that you had developed. And that has become a touchstone for my spiritual leadership and my teaching of ritual. I've experienced you teaching that several times in different venues. I brought it to my communities, and it really has transformed. Somebody talked earlier, I think maybe Phyllis, about teaching the art of followership, which creates the leader. The leader precipitates out of the group, and I really learned that so much from you. I remember you warning that group at some point during that week of Kala Don't open your eyes at the end of a chant and see the person across the circle from you immediately decide that they're your beshert, sell all your belongings and move across the country to live with them. That you knew that this work would powerfully open hearts and dissolve boundaries and make people vulnerable. And it maybe was not the moment to make any major life decisions. So that time in Fort Collins some 26 years ago was the beginning of what has grown for me into one of my dearest, strongest friendships with you and collaborative partnership. And a partnership and a friendship, as any good friendship must, that has tugged at me, stretched me, pushed me, pulled me ever deeper and ever farther into the God field. During my first semester of rabbinic school at the Academy for Jewish Religion in California, I talked my dean into letting me take time out from classes in the very first semester to attend your first ecstatic meditation retreat that you led at the Fitzgerald Center in Jemez Springs. And Rockmail was there, and you had just recently come together and were teaching together. And I insisted also that AJR give me credit, school credit for that retreat, because I knew that the work was that essential to my spiritual growth, my rabbinate, and my very sanity. So I want to say what so many people have talked already, and we'll talk further about aspects that touch them, but I try to distill what the essence of the work is for me. And I want to say that at least part of its essence is that it opens through the voice. That is key for me. I mean, in our tradition, all of creation happens through the voice, through vocalization. And the voice, I know this as a somatic person, I consider this area the mitzrayim of the body, the throat, the vocal structures, the place that the chants are channeled through can become so squeezed and so held in the face of traumatic experience. When one feels unsafe, then one feels separate from God, cut off and alone in the world when the voice is closed. So to invite the renewal of the flow of voice as a primary pathway to divine presence, and of course the voice as seated in the whole body, this is a powerfully healing modality. Chanting phrases from the tradition that are resonant with the vibratory shamanic power of ancient Hebrew entrains the discursive body-mind, awakening and enlivening the spaces within the person and the spaces between the people, until the world, which I have experienced with you, is glistening with tangible presence, and the channels occluded by the horrors of the centuries and the ongoing painful violence of our times, those channels are flowing once again. Peleg Elohim male mayim, the rivers pouring forth from Eden, the streams flowing through this channel of the body. This is the essence of the work as I've experienced it. And in it, I feel seen, held, and accompanied on the mystic's path. So I've watched you, Shefa, my sister, pursue the mystic quest, inviting and enticing people to fill with God, even in the face of the scorn, skepticism, and hyper-rationality of Western colonized Judaism. You've done this with the tenacious, passionate, yet gentle persistence of the Shekhinah herself, accompanying the people in their exile, steeping the work in beauty, delight, and joy, even as you guide people to enter and honor, as others have said, the most knotted, unexamined places in their bodies and souls. I have experienced your work as a homecoming, a safe haven in the uneasy, sometimes downright unfriendly seas of the Jewish world, giving me the courage to bring my whole self into my Jewish practice, and doing that for so many others. So in this moment of recognition and integration, this pause between inhale and exhale, I want to bless you with the faith of the generations, the ever-present support of your guidance team, the strength of body, clarity of mind, and depth of heart to continue your journey toward wholeness through the great open space of love, and to keep bringing all of us with you. I love you, I honor you, and I thank you.
For anybody who has not seen and experienced Diane and Shefa working together, it is one of the treats of the universe. At the last several, either Ruach Haaretz or Kalot Shabbos services, the chants, the poetry which we can recognize from having just heard Diane, the dance, the magic that happens when the two of them work together is an experience not to miss in a lifetime. Rhonda.
Thank you, Diane. And wow, that's all I can say about everything. I feel so honored, particularly as a lay person, to be part of this group. The first images that come to me of seeing Shefa in action are her dancing through the streets of Berkeley, drumming and chanting at the Kala in 1993. And I thought, yes, this is Jewish renewal. This is the Judaism I've been looking for. So I just see that the hand of Shefa has reached far and wide, certainly within our renewal circles, but way beyond our little renewal group. There's a song by Alan Bachman, Desert Wind. It's the words are, she changes everything she touches, and everything she touches changes. And that's, to me, the alchemist in you, Shefa, that the work brings to life in each of us. I mean, how do we summarize 25 years of an amazing journey? You know, you are an explorer, an enchantress, a lover of God. And the most fun that I've gotten to experience with you recently is just being in joy. You know, walking on the beaches and seeing the world a little bit through that perspective, that there is so much possibility. I see you as a channel, and I think Rachmiel spoke to that. And you're creating technology which acts as a catalyst for greater consciousness of love and connection. You're so prolific, your writings, the chants, the workshops, and of course, in the last 17 months, the Zoomosphere. And I remember the conversation right before you started the Thursday night groups. It's like, we have to move beyond fear. I can't be in this world in fear. And how do we connect in love? And what a brilliant contradiction to what was happening in that moment. And I think it's a perfect lesson that's where the practice really shows up, you know, when we're in that place of darkness. Your chants give us access. Even the most novice Hebrew reader can get a little taste of Hebrew. By mining the essence of Torah, the Psalms, your chants provide portals for self-exploration as well as meaningful and relevant connection to Torah. And I think Phyllis, you spoke to it, other people, that this idea of creating container, I think you had to hit me over the head numerous times about that, but I'm getting it. It's only taken, whatever, 30 years. That when you set the container, you can have safety, you can have ecstatic connection, and that is such a gift to the world, because I think we've lost that ability to really appreciate practice. And that's a gift that I feel that I personally learned, is that your practice is what creates the container for the work. And I bless you with total strength and joy in that. I asked several people who I know locally who have been students, and I just wanted to share how your work has impacted them. So one person said to me, chanting and conversations with Shefa opened my heart and mind to possibilities for how to be in the world. I'm filled with gratefulness for the many ways she shares her wisdom, growth, and heart-centered understanding of life. Another person said, I've always felt a personal relationship with God, but often had to translate traditional prayers to avoid the anthropomorphic male God of the prayer books, which I find alienating and aversive. I don't have to invest energy doing that when I pray with Shefa. Her translations and interpretations and energy take me to a heart space with Ein Sof. What a gift. And she goes on to say that she's been practicing meditating for 26 years. But when those times come where she's feeling conflicted or can't sleep, it's really through Shefa's chants that she finds that still small place inside, and to find the silence in the middle of chaos. Another person said, she blew my mind and opened my heart. I was able to drop my ego and be present with others in a new way. Someone else said that you shared your birthday blessing process, and that transformed her way of experiencing birthdays, so that as the birthday person, the blessings are flowing through her, and she's taught that to her students. So Shefa, you walk your talk, your walk as a brilliant group leader, whether for 10 or for 250, whether at Kala or Ruach HaAretz or your own retreats, you use the alchemy of chant and meditation and intention to open the gates of consciousness. And you lent your wisdom to these organizations, being an integral part, while at the same time creating your own, called Zimra, and now Love at the Center. So generous and prolific, the work has come through. And as Phyllis mentioned, your website is a veritable treasure chest, and it's free. So, but I think that to me reflects your spirit and the spirit of the work. So the web reaches out further and further through Institute for Jewish Studies, through synagogues around the world. And I think one of your secret skills is being a sleuth consciousness raiser for the more traditional Jewish groups out there. You've brought your work to Reformed and Reconstructionists and conservative movements, waking up those who are hungering for greater depth in their Jewish practice. You've carried on the work of Rabbi Zalman Schachter, Shalom Yisrael, out into the world, renewing and revitalizing that practice with depth and meaning. So thank you for being so impeccable in your work and being such a beautiful light and spirit and container for the work that you have been able to translate, so that our ears and our hearts can go on the journey with you. Thank you for bringing so much more joy into the world. I love you. Thank you.
Amen. So Rhonda, you did touch on something, and Jeff, you said it as well. One could say downside, but it's an absolute truth. Shefa, you've taught us you can't go home again. that old Judaism, and unfortunately, most of our synagogues are no longer places that satisfy once we've tasted Judaism through you. So you welcome us into the new world of creation. And you've done this all along for as long as we've known you. And it's actually not just the 25 years since your graduation. You started way before that. So nevertheless, okay. So Rachmiel mentioned KZ calls him Ra 9, 1 through 9. And from, I had the great privilege of working with Shefa in KZ 1, 2, 6, and 8. I like to say it's because I was a slow learner. I had to go back 4 times to keep getting the work. And very quickly in KZ 1, I saw that because Shefa opens people, because the work opens people, so that what I needed to do was to be present to people in each of those 4 cohorts as a spiritual director, to mine the work with people who were touched. And that was one of the great opportunities of my life that's actually led to the work I'm doing now. And I didn't think to mention that, but thank you for that. So from KZ1, we have 2 people who are going to represent that, and we're going to start with David.
Well, thank you, Phyllis, and I'm so honored to be able to say a few words to you, Shefa, this evening, and it's so wonderful also to see so many friends and fellow travelers from so many different retreats and so many different experiences over the last 25 years. So what is the work? That's kind of the assignment that we were given. And I like to follow the assignments that you give Shefa. So this year marks the 24th year that I've had the great honor of knowing you and joy of learning from you and having you as a guide. You've been a teacher, and like the greatest teachers, as Phyllis was saying, also a model. You've taught me to harvest the fruits of my practice, but never to rest on my laurels. As Suzuki Roshi said, we are perfect just the way we are, and we could still use a little improvement. So you're always seeking to manifest more, to go deeper, to be more present, to be the absolutely most authentic Shefa you can be in relationship to that divine mystery that holds us all together. Your courage and determination are an inspiration, but you are always clear that this work, while it comes through you, is not about you. Very clear about that. So I'd like to recount a personal story that I think is pertinent to the RRC recognition that we're celebrating. In the late 90s, I think it was 1998 perhaps, at Eilat Chaim, you and I were chatting one-on-one at one of the picnic tables on a truly glorious Catskill summer day. And I said something to you like, I know you've been ordained as a Reconstructionist rabbi, but that must pale in comparison to being given smicha by Reb Zalman. And I meant this as a compliment, of course. So I was surprised by your response. It was clear that I had insulted you. And you said to me, David, I worked very hard to get my degree from RRC. It was not easy for me, and I'm very proud of that accomplishment. And I apologized, and I said that I had not understood how important it was to you. So what is the work? The work is about being aware, about not making too many assumptions, and always about truth-telling. So another story. At one of the KZ alumni retreats during a particularly intense exercise, I could sense the presence of angels, particularly connected to my mother, who had died some years prior. And in sharing of the importance of this with the group, I made an offhand comment, something like, I'm not frequently visited by angels. And you, Shefa, you interrupted me and you said insistently, but David, when you're on retreat with me, it happens a lot. I think that might be all of our experience. And I think I've heard that a lot in the comments today. And you were right. You were right. So what is the work? The work is about being completely present so that God's presence can be called forth. A third story. When I came to Shefa for coaching on a work difficulty, yes, Shefa is also a business coach. After describing the situation in some detail, I was speculating about why it was happening. First, you said to me, David, yes, many things are happening outside of you, but the tumult you are experiencing is actually inside you. And then picking up on a little bit of self-pity that I had, you continued, David, don't say and don't ask, it happened for a reason. Ask yourself instead, how will I use this to help me to awaken? And that is truly a gift, to see reality as an opportunity to wake up. Yes, the work is about waking up. So like anything that is authentic, when you learn it deeply, it maps to many other areas of life. And while this work is nominally about chanting and spiritual maturity, it is more deeply about being a leader, as Phyllis was talking about, in life, whatever the domain. It's hard to define it, but the soul journeys we take during Kazooms, and I recommend to everybody the treasure trove of YouTube Kazooms that are available when you subscribe to Shefa's channel. Please check them out. And the week-long retreats, these have deep reverberations and have helped me to repattern into a clearer, more loving, stronger person. I credit a great deal of my continual growth in all areas of my life, including my role as CEO of my company, to what I have learned and am learning about myself through these practices. They are preventive tools, they are diagnostic tools, and they are cures, all in one. When I'm feeling unhappy and disconnected and lose perspective, I'm quicker to catch myself before I spiral down. And with this recognition, I have tools and practices that raise me up, increase my happiness, keep me connected with life. These are not only internally felt states, but they manifest as patience and compassion and love and clarity and power. And this work leads to active engagement in the world, to be a force for good. So what is the work? The work is to bless and to be blessed, to eradicate violence in word, thought, and deed, to see and to be seen, to lead and to follow. The work is best done in pairs or in small groups so that we can witness and inspire each other and draw on our collective wisdom. The work is reclaiming the past and envisioning the future. The work is remembering to attune to the soul perspective. The work is stillness, and the work is ecstasy. The work is about serious play and playful ritual. But most importantly, as long as we are part of this great chorus, this nishmat kol chai, the soul breath of all life, the work is never done. The work is never done. That might be the most important lesson that I have learned from you. So I want to end by expressing my gratitude and my great love for you, Shefa, for being a trailblazer for all of us. I offer blessings to you, to the Shefas of the past that we've all known, to the Shefa of this moment, and to the Shefas yet to come. I love you with all my heart and with all my soul and with all my might. Dibarti.
Shamati. Thank you, David. You're speaking about RRC and Shefa's student days reminds me of something I didn't think to say before. Shefa taught me something about how she does her preparation. She would announce that she had to write a paper or she had to plan a service for some Shabbaton, and she would go upstairs where she lived in our house, and an hour later she came down finished. And she taught me that my practice of procrastination was not the way to do things, that you go and you sit down and let it unfold. And she did it day after day, week after week. That's the way she did rabbinical school. I don't know how she did all the schools before that. It's the way she did all of her preparation for all the services she led, all the classes she was going to lead. And that was such an inspiration of what intention and focus can bring and produce. Whew. So Lina, KZ1.
Thank you, Phyllis. My brother David, it's such a delight to follow you. You just got me smiling from ear to ear, and I love you. And I'm just delighted and humbled to be celebrating you and your work, Reb Shefa. You know, you initiated me on the path of love through Shir HaShirim 17 years ago. It was the first week of the first cohort of Kol Zimra, the training program nominally about Hebrew chant leadership, but really about becoming an energy worker on the path of love, using Hebrew chant as the primary technology. So as I remember it, we were lounging on pillows in the red yurt on the grounds of the Ellenville Lat Chaim at the end of our first week together, right before Shabbat, during a heavy rainstorm. You, Reb Shefa, and your beloved Rachmiel, you initiated us, you betrothed us, each to the other, through a passionate chanting of Shir HaShirim, as captured on the CD Shir Delight. It was the most spiritually erotic experience of my life, one that began a transformation of my whole being. The following years of chant practice have wrought healing and awakening and a growth in all four worlds, circumcising my heart, releasing shame continuously, learning to listen to my body, healing intergenerational trauma, stepping into power, and most significantly, allowing myself to be and to feel loved. The freeing up of all that energy just unleashed a torrent of creativity. It's manifested through my life and has manifested through the life of many of your students and through you, right? Bringing Torah to people in newly accessible ways, enlivening practices like counting the Omer, books written, chants created, justice sought, lives touched and healed and renewed, and all of it soaked in the energy and the love of the song of all songs. Through it all, I have centered myself in this year, walking its path in Chevruta, learning its ways as each becomes ripe in its time, allowing it to soak my waking and kiss my sleeping dreams. Most recently, through a close, slow, delicious study with my beloved song sister, Shoshana Aziel, and a cohort of lovers centering this path, I am taking each word, each letter, each nuance into my body, memorizing and chanting, becoming the song's bard in service to love. So with gratitude to you, dear Shefa, the Shir HaShirim Rabbi, I share with you one of the fruits of your inspirational teaching, your inspirational leadership. The first chapter of the song, chanted in Shefa Nusach, interspersed with Shefa chant melodies. Shir HaShirim asher li Shlomo yishakeni min shikot pihu kitovim dodecha miyayin l'reach shemenecha tovim shemen turak shemecha al ken alamot ahevucha mashkeni acharecha Naharutza Heviani Hamelech Hadarav Nagila Venis Mechabach Nazkira Dodecha Miyahin Mesharim Mahevucha Shechora Ani Vinava Benot Yerushalayim Ke'ohale Keder Kiryot Shlomo Al tiruni she'ani shecharchoret sheshafatni hashamesh b'nei imi nicharuvi samuni notera et hakramim karmi sheli lo natarti hagidali she'ahava nafshi echa tireh Echa tarbit basoharaim shelama ehiyek otya על עדרי חברך, אם לא תדעי לך היפה בנשים, צאי לך בעקבי הצאן, וראי את גדיותייך על משכנות הרועים. לסוסתי ברכבי פרעה, דמיתיך רעייתי. נבו לחייך בתורים, צווארך בחרוזים, תורי זהב נעשה לך עם נקודות הכסף. עד שהמלך במסיבו נרדי נתן רחוב, צרור המור דודי לי בן שדיילים, אשכול הכופר דודי לי בכרמי עין גדי. הנך יפה ראיתי, הנך יפה, עינייך יונים, הנך יפה דודי, אף נעים, אף ארצנו רעננה, קורות בתינו ארזים, ראיתנו ברוטים. Thank you, thank you, thank you, dear Shefa, for allowing love at the center to channel through you, to nourish all of us, to transform our world. I am so, so deeply honored to be of your lineage. I love you, Dibarti.
Shamati. And thank you for welcoming us into Love at the Center and the work that you have done with Shefa and with Shoshana Asiel and a group of others. If we look at the faces on these pages of Zoom land, and if we could see the faces of all 11 people with Shefa, we would see a lot of love at the center, people who we love at the center of our own souls, people with whom we have had real and alive and intimate connections because of the work that we've done with you, Shefa. So I want to say one more thing just before we move to our last but not least person. You have heard from almost every one of us of significant moments at Eilat Chaim, the Jewish Renewal Retreat Center. And this is all with thanks for you, Jeff, for having created it. Miracles happened there, miracles for all of us. And you can't know the extent to which that is still influencing our lives. So last and not least from KZ to Shoshana.
Lynn, I just want to say that when you were offering that most creative understanding of Shir HaShirim, I felt and saw that each of us are like a unique chant, both those of us who are on and those of the KZ community. It's almost as if Shefa's work has come through each of us as our own medicine and chant. So thank you. Rabbi Shefa Gold, you are a disruptor of the status quo. The status quo that has existed for centuries. The status quo that has been patriarchal, the status quo that led with the head and not with the heart and the soul. I know you didn't want us to talk about you, but you are the container for the work and we need to talk about you a little bit. I'm not sure one decides to be a pioneer or a maverick or a trailblazer. I think it's sort of like being a prophet. You see and feel and hear things that others don't. And it's almost as if it chooses you. But the call is so strong that even if you wanted to resist, you couldn't. You've been called to bring Jewish prayer into a new paradigm, and you have renewed our days as old as you bring the Zmirot of the temple and the Kohanim back to life. It takes tremendous connection to spirit, a strong ego, and dedication to the work itself to create anything new, let alone Jewish prayer. And at times it can be at odds with one's personal comfort level. I remember through the years you talking about attending rabbinic conferences where you were not only not included or respected, but not acknowledged for what you were doing. or being at Shabbatonim, or being a scholar in residence, or even a chant circle at more traditional circles, and people meeting you with deer in the lights kind of eyes, and sometimes even hostility, only for you to learn years later that your invitation to be intimate with divine was something they couldn't handle at the time, but came to realize, appreciate, and then offer gratitude to you much later on. Your work has a life of its own, and I'm sure that many of those people here, like myself, have gone to Shabbat services and have heard your chants chanted as if they came from Sinai, never knowing that they have come from you. But in a way, your work does come from Sinai, because for those of us initiated in the path of Hebrew chant, we understand the power of its revelatory power, the ability to shift consciousness with new windows and new doors opening and the silence afterwards, and the ability to transform and to heal. Many of us have been healed by your work. I can't imagine sitting upstairs, perhaps in Heme Springs in your beautiful, beautiful sanctuary, getting the inspiration to start a chant leadership workshop for a form of prayer that had yet to be venerated or respected or established. But the result is here. And the gift and the blessing is that many of us have not only learned how to lead Hebrew chant, but you've created a community of beloveds of the beloved. And I know I speak for many when I say that you've not only taught us to be light workers, but we touch each other's hearts and souls so much that we are each other's lifeline to this intimate, deep, soulful connection, whereas in other circles we might be shunned. Here, our souls shine with one another, and it is this love between us that is an absolute outgrowth of your call to the beloved for yourself. On a personal note, you've changed my life, you know? You've offered me a pathway to connection with spirit that fills my soul and connects me to source. You've role modeled female rabbinic leadership of the Shekhinah. You made me change my name from Susan to Shoshana. And in the 12 years of spiritual coaching, you pushed me to the edge every time. And you taught me to be an energy worker and how to create an arc of Jewish prayer. Many years ago, when the KZ2 cohort finished, we created, and I hope you still have it, a scrapbook to you and Rachmiel. And I think I remember the sentiment of my words of gratitude. I said something like, you have the courage to keep climbing to the top of the mountain, and you bring down to all of us the wisdom, revelation, and teaching that will continue to keep Judaism alive and vibrant and relevant. Change is what has kept Judaism alive at every step along the way. We replaced sacrifice with prayer. In exile in Babylonia, it was the study of texts that kept our tradition flourishing. And while there have not been any outside forces, the stale sort of dead prayer is what you have been able to bring alive. You've enabled the verses of Torah to come alive through the vipational practice of chant and to be embodied. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hametim, your work has given life to the dead. I'm always so grateful to Rabbi Art Green of RRC for supporting your rabbinic studies, even when I've heard stories at times it was very challenging for him and for you. Your rabbinic title has helped strengthen the container for the body of work and for the creativity and numerous contributions. Each chant that comes through you is like a little diamond of God's light, inviting us into deeper connection with God the beloved and with one another. The test and the stamp of truth is often when particularism expands to the universal. The work of Hebrew chant has expanded beyond religious affiliation, across faiths, across continents, which to me speaks to the power of the work's resonance universally. While I'm not an official member of RRC to be able to bestow this upon you, I want to take my responsibility this evening and assume its empowerment. For your 25 years of serving as rabbi, for the depth and the breadth of the contribution of your work to Jewish life, for the development and establishment of the spiritual practice of Hebrew chant that envelops people's souls like a loving talit embrace of our collective Jewish sacred words. I take the privilege to bestow upon you this evening in our sacred container of the love and blessing of this Kol Zimra community and beyond, a honoris causa, an honorary degree of divinity, of esteem, respect, and love. Ishar Kohech, may you go forward with continued strength to continue the work. May this ritual and this love bring you renewal, passion, and courage. And with Rachmiel at your side, continue to offer us the gifts and the jewels and the blessing and the light of your beloved connection to the beloved. Mazal tov, and with deep, deep gratitude.
Ein Yehi Ratzon Shoshana. Beautiful. So what strikes me is to say Baruch Hashem that you did not have the 25th anniversary celebration this year in the form that RRC would have done it. Because if they had, we would not have had this opportunity to actually honor the work of all of these years so far of your life, and particularly to let you know how deeply they have touched every one of us and all the people that we've touched who you don't even know. So it was beshert that it didn't happen this year at RRC, even though 25 years ago, we made a celebratory party in our backyard after you were ordained, after you were graduated. This far beyond that is really the celebration that has been waiting for 25 years. So take a breath with me, everyone. I hope that you've considered all that you have heard that the 10 of us have said, that has also touched upon your experiences. And what hasn't yet been said, that's needing your unique voice. And I'm going to ask each of you, even those of us who spoke, for the things that we forgot to say, we intended to say, we didn't think to say, but for those of you who didn't get the chance to speak, please send Shefa a card in writing so that she has it to keep, so that she can read the words, see them, and maybe even share them with all the rest of us. A compilation of the work as seen through her students, her colleagues, her friends, her family, all of us who love her. So please send it to her so that she will hear each and every unique voice.
Thank you so much, everybody, those here and those on Zoom. I feel so touched, and I just want to I just wanted to end with we'll end with the chant that is a celebration of unity, but I want to just say that I woke up this morning and June 19th. It's now a federal holiday,
Yeah.
which I'm very happy about. But before that, it was an important day for me. It had some history, and I wanted to share what that was. In 1979, I had been on birth control pills for a couple of years, and I decided that I should get an IUD and put in. And I went to someplace in Englewood Hospital, and on June 19th. And when the IUD got put inside me, I had an experience of the inside opening up that was extraordinary. And I looked out the window, and there was a cemetery outside the window of the hospital. And I laughed and I said, "Oh, not far to go." So it turns out that IUD changed my life. A year later, on June 19th, 1980, I decided it was time for me to get pregnant. And I had the IUD taken out in a very, not profound, a very painful time of that IUD taken out because I thought I was going to get pregnant then. And And what happened was that I didn't know, but that IUD scarred me so that it kept me from getting pregnant. And though I tried and tried over many years to try to get pregnant, I couldn't because of the damage that the IUD had done. And so on June 19th, when I come to June 19th, I realize that I am kind of destined or called into a different kind of mothering. And that that the small mother that I could have been opened up to the energy of the great mother that wants to come through.
Yeah.
And so it was, so that realization just, and to be here with you on June 19th, it feels really such a sense of fullness and gratefulness for this path that I could not have imagined. So I want to end our ritual with this chant from the Song of Songs that says, "One alone is my dove, my perfect one alone, so luminous in her mother's heart." And for me, to chant these words, "one alone," is to come into this place of unity consciousness, knowing that we are one, and out of that oneness, all of the miracles of our diversity flow. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Look around that beautiful Zen
Oh,
room.
sweet people.
Yeah.
Oh, we love you so much.
And now we celebrate.
Mhm.